This talk is made easier by my previous colleagues who have covered most of the complications in their presentations. So this will be just an overview of what all things can happen during each and every step of SICS. How to recognize them, how to manage them. I will be just rushing through it very fastly. Surgical videos are quite a lot of surgical videos are there. So just have a look on surgical videos to detect and manage the complications. Now we will be dealing about complications which can occur at each and every step of SICS. The first step is the wound construction. Now if there is an anterior incision, there will be a poor self-sealing effect, wound leak, and against the rule astigmatism. So you have to manage this by suturing the tunnel. Either a horizontal suture or a radial suture can be applied. A posterior place incision will have a wider tunnel, bleeding, there will be premature entry. Nucleus delivery and instrument manipulation can be difficult if the incision is posteriorly placed. The length of the incision is very important and it is determined by the size and hardness of the cataract and the size of the IOL. If the incision is short, you have to enlarge it with a keratome, and if there is a long incision, always suture it as told previously. Depth of the incision plays a very crucial role. A superficial incision or superficial dissection will lead to a buttonhole or tearing of the roof of the tunnel. You have to manage by a newer dissection at a deeper plane from the opposite side. Premature entry, a newer dissection should be done at a lesser depth from the opposite side of the tunnel. Always remember, whenever you have a premature entry, always suture the tunnel, and radial sutures are better. Scleral disincision occurs if the groove is too deep. There is complete separation of the superior and the inferior sclera at the incision site. Descemet's membrane detachment and stripping is seen if the incision is too anterior or there is an improper entry. There is an inadequate size of the incision which can be due to the tunnel or the side port entry, faulty instrumentation techniques and faulty instruments. Proper and timely recognition is very important. Whenever you detect a DM stripping intraoperatively, reposit it with air bubble or a viscoelastic. Even if you detect it post-operatively, you can take the patient back for resurgery, just inject an air bubble and you see the reposition. This is a photograph showing which was detected post-operatively. We have injected an air bubble and this is the line of the demarcation of the DM detachment. Complications related to paracentesis can be, there can be DM stripping if the paracentesis is too central into the cornea or if it is a smaller size. If it is a larger size, there will be leakage, and if it is too peripheral into the sclera, there will be bleeding. You can see that the side port in both the cases are too peripheral into the sclera, almost near the sclera. So there is a bleeding which is going on when you are operating. Now, capsulotomy. I am going about CCC is the preferred technique, and the size of the rhexis is very important. If the rhexis is small, there will be difficulty in nucleus prolapse and cortical expiration. You have to manage it by doing a double rhexis, and if you are not confident in it, you can give 2 or 3 relaxing incisions, and if not, you can convert into a can opener type. A large rhexis in the back IOL placement will be difficult. There will be in-out situation wherein one haptic is in the back and one haptic is in the sulcus. You can see the video. This is a mature cataract where the rhexis is being done. It's comparatively a smaller size rhexis. This video is going to take a bit of more time because in this video I am showing both the things. It's a small rhexis and the difficulty a surgeon is experiencing in prolapsing the nucleus. You can say that this is an eccentrically placed small rhexis. Now the surgeon is trying to prolapse the nucleus, but he is lucky that it is a hypermature cataract, the milky cortex has given way and there is a thick nucleus which is left behind. But still it is not adequate. I think he should have gone ahead with the bimanual technique of prolapsing the nucleus in this situation. Peripheral extension. I am showing the 3 videos in which how to manage a peripheral extending rhexis through different techniques. First, whenever you have a peripheral extension, always reform the AC with a viscoelastic. Grab the flap close to the tear and pull centrally. Always remember to put a centripetal force. You can just cut the capsule ahead of the extending rhexis with the cystitome tape, or you can start it from the opposite flap by making a small incision with the Vanna scissor and continue in a reverse direction. You can see in this video is a flap which is done in the opposite direction and we are converted into a routine CCC. Complications of hydrodissection have been covered previously. Just to sum it up, there can be an inadequate corticocapsular bag separation, a fluid misdirection, zonular damage, PCR, nucleus drop and capsular box syndrome. Inadequate corticocapsular back separation occurs when there is an incomplete or partial hydrodissection. The nucleus rotation becomes difficult. You can see in this video that the surgeon is not confident and he is going on doing hydrodissection at multiple quadrants. It is not a complete hydrodissection what he is doing. He is in the learning curve and he is attempting many small hydrodissection attempts. Hydrodissection in each quadrant for 360 degree combined with gentle bimanual rotational force on the nucleus will help in this type of situations, and that's what he has done at the end. He has done hydrodissection in all the quadrants and now he is able to prolapse it. Fluid misdirection occurs when the hydrocannula is incorrectly placed deep to the iris and superficial to the anterior capsule. Fluid passes through the zonules into the vitreous cavity, causing vitreous hydration, positive pressure and a shallow AC. A capsular block syndrome occurs in small rexes or vigorous hydrodissection. Lens floats anteriorly and literally seals the capsular bag, trapping the fluid, creating positive pressure and tearing the anterior posterior capsule. Prevention is by adequate size of the rexes, slow and controlled hydrodissection. Always depress the central nucleus after you have done the hydrodissection and depress the posterior lip of the incision to release the trapped BSS or viscoelastic solution. Difficulty of nucleus prolapse has already been dealt with by Dr. Ganesh. It is seen nucleus prolapse is always difficult in soft cataracts, incomplete hydrodissection, small rexes, mid-iris synechiae, hard cataract and small pupil. Points to be considered during the prolapse is the cornea and the pupillary status. Look at the cataract density, the zonular integrity and the tunnel size. Nucleus delivery becomes difficult in case of small tunnel, irregular tunnel or premature entry. Complications include endothelial damage, PCR and iridodialysis. In case of a small tunnel, always enlarge the tunnel. You can see in this case that the tunnel was small and the surgeon is attempting nucleus delivery, and in that process, this is the iridodialysis part. He has caused an iridodialysis. Hyphema, or you can say intraoperative bleeding. It is usually seen when the posteriorly placed tunnel or a deep scleral incision is there, occurs when there is damage to the iris or the ciliary body. Whenever intraoperative bleeding is there, form the AC with an air bubble and at the end always suture. A tight air bubble will help in preventing the tamponade. If you observe a post-operative hyphema, wait and watch, give rest and pad and bandage for 24 hours. If the IOP is greater than 30, start with anti-glaucoma therapy and control the inflammation. Surgical intervention is required if there is a persistent high IOP, corneal blood staining and total hyphema. You can see in this case that there was an intraoperative bleeding and after injecting an air bubble, it's been tamponated. Iridodialysis can occur while extending the incision or introducing instruments improperly into the anterior chamber. Delivery of the nucleus or poor quality of instruments. This was a video which was shown earlier when doing the irrigating vectors method. The nucleus was being delivered and iridodialysis occurred. This is a photograph in which an inferior iridodialysis is occurred. This occurs usually when the iris is sandwiched with the vectors and the cataract. If the dialysis is less than 1 clock hour, it can be left alone. If it is more than 1 clock hour, a mecanal suture has to be put. A sector iridectomy is done if the iridodialysis is more and there is a lot of iris chafing. Iris prolapse is seen in case of an improper tunnel, positive pressure, a high infusion pressure. You can see in this video, the flow was so fast and with such a speed that the iris got prolapsed. Or in case of floppy iris. Management is to identify the cause, repeat the block if needed, carefully reposition the iris and use side port for cortical cleanup and suture the tunnel at the end of the surgery. Now, SICS is very less prone to this complication because if your tunnel is well constructed, chances of positive pressure is less. Now, what can be the causes for positive pressure? External compression due to the speculum or excess pull of the radial suture, poor facial block, valsalva manual like coughing and straining, short neck and obese patients, or a large volume of anesthetic solution injected. Now, management is to recognize the cause, liberal use of visco to form the AC, always use the side port for cortical cleanup and reposite the iris gently with a spatula. Loss of red reflex, always suspect a choroidal hemorrhage, stop and ensure that all the wounds are airtight and start IV mannitol immediately. Intraoperative myopsis occurs with an excessive handling of the iris. You reduce or avoid iris touch and use small pupil strategy. Zonular dialysis has been dealt by Dr. Ganesh. It is usually seen in small rexes and large nucleus size, inadequate hydro, excessive nucleus maneuvering, poor visualization as a result of loose cortex, accidental aspiration of the anterior or the posterior capsule, or excessive force while dialing the IOL. This is a video of showing a small pupil. A blind rhexis was done. We call it as AMR, Andajma rhexis. We do rhexis blindly. And the rhexis was small, and when the surgeon was trying to prolapse the nucleus, he was having difficulty, and in that process, eventually turned up in whole bag removal. Now, detection is very important. Always suspect a zonal dialysis if the nucleus rotates freely in the bag, but does not prolapse into the anterior chamber, and instead shows a tilt downward to one side. The posterior capsule will show a corrugated mark perpendicular to the dialysis area. Management is already dealt by Dr. Ganesh, so I won't go in. PCR is the next complication, it's a nightmare to every surgeon. Whenever a PCR occurs, never lose patience. You detect the signs. There are a few important signs for detection of PCR, that is pupillary snap, pupil distortion, the failed nucleus rotation, vitreous strands or vitreous incarceration into the anterior chamber, red gap appears, IOL decentration, and a nucleus drop. These are principles of management. Is an 8-point plan. Prevent it, don't panic, don't deny, do nothing, that is also not correct. Never pull the vitreous, visualize it, remove it, and have a thorough follow-up. Now, if there is no vitreous disturbance, seal the tear by injecting the visco above the plane of PC, and residual cortex is removed by dry aspiration. If there is vitreous disturbance, tamponade with visco, an automated antivirectomy is done, and residual cortex is removed by dry aspiration. Cortex near the rent margin is approached large, and peeling of the cortex from equator towards the rent is done. Residual cortex is usually seen in poorly dilating pupil, positive pressure, small rhexis, and PCR. It is always wise to retract the iris and check at the end of the surgery for any residual cortex. If there is a small fluffy cortex in the periphery, no intervention is required. But if it's a bigger chunk in the visual axis, take for surgical intervention. Drop nucleus, refer to Dr. Usha or any other VR surgeon who is your neighbor. Post-operative complications, agonizations, which can be seen on the first post-op day. The predisposing factors are excessive cautery, improper tunnel or suturing, incarceration of the material into the tunnel. It can manifest as wound leak, inadvertent filtering bleb, or an iris prolapse. Always perform a Cedars test to check the leak. This is the photograph showing an incested bleb. A filtering bleb was detected in post-operative day. Treatment is a small leak, do pressure patch, a large leak, exploration of the wound, and suturing is done. Iris prolapse, it can lead to chronic anterior uveitis, CME, or an endophthalmitis. Treatment depends on the duration of exposure. If it is less than 24 hours and covered by conjunctiva, reposition. If it is more than 24 hours and exposed, excise the prolapsed iris and resuturing is done. This is the photograph in which the iris prolapse is there, but it has prolapsed and stuck only into the internal lip. It has not come out. So this, we can leave it, but we have to consider that the chances of anterior uveitis, CME, and CME will be there. Corneal complications like edema, striate keratopathy, bullous keratopathy, DM stripping, or recurrent epithelial erosions can occur. These are different pictures showing the different corneal complications. This is a photograph of DM detachment, which was again attached by putting an air bubble. The diffuse corneal edema, and this is a striate keratopathy. Now, the causes for this is operative trauma from the instruments or irrigating fluids, pre-existing corneal disease, or post-operative raised IOP. Management is through prophylaxis, is used plenty of viscoelastic, reduce IOP, and steroid and cycloplagics. Iritis and FM can occur due to excessive handling of the iris, residual cortex, or visco. Fibrinous reaction is maximum on 5th to 7th post-op day. Steroid drops and cycloplagics are used to manage this, and the frequency depends on the severity of the reaction. Prevention is a minimum handling of the tissues, use proper irrigating solutions, thorough cleaning of the instruments, and treat inflammation adequately and timely. Post-operative IOP rise is seen in case of retained viscoelastic. This is very important. Over-distension of the anterior chamber at the end of the surgery. Never aim for a tight AC at the end of the surgery. This will lead to post-operative IOP rise. Just to sum up, IOL malpositions, pupillary capture can be partial or total. Okay, causes can be pupillary dilatation with IOL placed in the sulcus, floppy iris. Complications will have low-grade iritis, pupillary block, defective vision, PCO, and CME. Management is in-bag IOL implantation. Whenever you have optic capture on the first post-op day, dilate the pupil and then followed by miosis. Sometimes it may release the pupillary optic capture. Early cases can be taken for repositioning. Later cases, if it is detected, no intervention should be done. A YAG PI is always done if there is a pupillary block component. IOL decentration. Causes can be asymmetric haptic placement, haptic distortion, desensitization or fracture, PC rent, zonal dialysis, post-operative trauma or capsular contracture. Management is a good rhexis, symmetric haptic placement, large optic diameter and single piece lens. Treatment is conservative, that is reassurance myotic, and surgical if there is repositioning, IOL exchange or an explosion. transplant. I just covered the complications which are occurred during the steps of SICS. The list is endless if you take a general consideration of complications in cataract surgery. I request if the session is over, if you have any questions, you can open for panel discussion. And all of you who have not received the DVD can collect the DVD outside from the boy who is sitting at the counter. Any questions?